Welcome back. This is the Northwest Tank Line Super Bowl show coming to you from Radio Row, New Orleans Convention Center. Of course, New Orleans hosting Super Bowl 59, featuring the Kansas City Chiefs and the Philadelphia Eagles. We will get to that game. Of course, it's the Moj. But we are going to take a bit of a left turn and talk about the Green Bay Packers season. And to join us is our guy from Green Bay, Bill Michaels. His sports show is the biggest sports show in the state of Wisconsin. And he has been kind enough to give us some time. Bill, welcome. The big unit's in the house. The big unit's in the house.
Solomon Wilcots came over a little bit earlier, and he sat down and he said, Moj is giving away cigars for any guests. So I texted you and said, can I be a guest? So when that happens, I'm going on, man.
So much for doing this stuff for like 15 years and the friendship and going to Green Bay and the great host that you were.
Yeah.
That Harley-Davidson tailgate party that we had with – well, Elvis was serving us barbecue. Elvis, we were talking about that earlier. So, that was a great trip, and thanks again for your hospitality. Before we start talking about the Packers, I was kind of thinking about this. You know, a lot of people in Canada, when they think of the Packers, they kind of think of the Saskatchewan Roughriders. And, you know, small community-based team. The region supports the team more so than the city itself. And the Rough Riders, their fans are the most rabid in the Canadian Football League. You can go to a hockey game, and I've been to a hockey game or spring training game in Phoenix, and I see people wearing Rough Rider jerseys, right? Much like Packer fans. But, you know, I understand in Canada because everybody wants to leave Saskatchewan and go to other parts of the country. I don't know if that really holds true for Wisconsin because it's such a beautiful part of the U.S., a hidden secret, so to speak. But what is it about the Packers that endears them to so many fans? Is it the history of the team and perhaps that, you know, tribal allegiance that you have through your dad or your granddad, or just what is it in your mind?
I think it's probably summed up best by the late, great John Madden. He said, you root for a team that's owned by the people. I think that's it.
Okay.
I think they don't have an owner that's, you know, got billions. They don't have a crazy owner that's got billions. They don't have a face that is an owner that comes out and speaks out and undercuts, you know, the coach or the general manager or players. I think it's the fact that the people own the team, and that, you know, for Christmas gifts, people buy what some outside of the area would call worthless stock. You're not going to get anything out of it other than the fact that you get a piece of paper in the mail that says you're a part owner of the Green Bay Packers. But yet, you know, I got one. It's hanging on my wall.
The reason I'm laughing, I had a friend of mine who bought some shares, and he handed me a business card, part owner, Green Bay Packers, right? Which it's true.
There's something to it. I can't explain it. It's the closest thing to the rabidness of, you know, the University of Michigan or Alabama or Ohio State. It's something that you are born into, bred into, that you aspire to for whatever reason. And, it doesn't hurt that you've had success for 30-plus years. You know, you go back to when Brett Favre was brought in by Ron Wolf and the Mike Holmgren era that really kind of reignited things. But, you know, the fact that you've been successful for 30 years, you're owned by the people, you're in the smallest media market of all professional sports, which is amazing to think about it within itself. Like if it was today and we were looking for a place to put another NFL team, it would never be Green Bay, Wisconsin. It would never happen. No. So I think all of that, like the little engine that could, people root for that.
It's funny you mentioned the little engine that could. I was just going to use that exact term because that's what came to mind when I thought about
That's what it is.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, don't forget, had it not been for George Halas of the Chicago Bears, who recognized the need for that rivalry, that the Packers wouldn't be there. He gave them $100,000 way back when just to stay above board so they could still, you know, remain afloat. Otherwise, they were leaving. It was going to fold and they were going to be done. But he knew at the time what kind of foresight he had to say, I think we need this. This is good for the game. And to be able to loan them the money and say, here you go, it was absolutely fantastic. So now you look at it today, and it's this massive $8 billion franchise that nobody owns but the people that pay their money into it, and that's it.
11-6 season this year. How would you assess the
Disappointing.
Packers? Okay.
Disappointing. Look at it this way. When was the last time the Packers had one win in the division? They are one Carl Brooks finger away from having no wins in the division. Think about that. They blocked that field goal as time expired. As Santos for the Chicago Bears tried to put one through the uprights, Carl Brooks stuck his big paw up and knocked the ball down. It was their only divisional win this year. They couldn't beat Minnesota. They couldn't beat Detroit. Both of those teams they played twice, and the other team they played twice was the Philadelphia Eagles. They couldn't beat them either. They barely beat the Chicago Bears. So to get to 11 wins was fantastic because we all said 11 wins. But it's how you get from point A to point B. It's like if I said right now, well, if they don't win 13 games next year, then Matt LaFleur's gone. But do they win 13 games and still not beat the elite? Or do they not get to 13 wins, but it's because a Dan Campbell-esque season through Detroit where they lose 17 players to IR because they just don't have the horses to get from point A to point B? That's why I never put numbers on it. But this year was disappointing. The offense looked dysfunctional at times. I know that Jordan Love got injured early on in the season, but he never looked right. And whether he wasn't processing properly. And remember, your first year, the league is learning you, and you're just trying to figure your way out. Now the league's got a book on him. And it says if you can get him on the run and get his footwork out from underneath him, he doesn't throw the ball real well. And he doesn't have an Aaron Rodgers flick it out of your wrist 70 yards down the field. He doesn't have that. So he's got to be a better fundamental quarterback. He's got to be a better decision quarterback. All those things now come. Now it's up to him to adjust back to what the league did. And I also think that they relied heavily on the run game for Josh Jacobs, and they got away from some of the things that they did so well schematically last year that – in play calling wise, open up like the likes of Tucker Kraft and Jaden Reed and those guys over the middle. So I just think they had a couple of things they went through, some growing pains, some injuries, and then, still 11 wins, but you didn't beat the elite. You're just a couple of plays away, and they were all self-inflicted.
Yeah. It's interesting. When I was previewing the playoffs, one of the things I love doing is looking at teams' records and then saying, okay, who did they beat that was in the playoffs, or what was their record against playoff teams? And you look at Philadelphia, I think they had 7 wins against playoff teams. And I remember Green Bay, and I was like, oh, I think they only had 1 maybe, if that. But that's
they beat the Rams, but that's when the Rams were down.
Yeah, but so who do you beat during the course of the year? And are your numbers inflated? Is it a mirage? Or are you the real deal in terms of the level of competition that you faced? What about the defense? I mean, because
they took a step forward. Here's the difference with the defense, though. They played statistically better, and they were in the top 10 in a lot of categories. But in big drives and big moments, they folded like they have in the past. They weren't able to sustain, and they really wanted to get home, switching it from a 3-4 to a 4-3 with Jeff Hafley. They wanted to be able to do it up front with the likes of Kenny Clark and T.J. Slayton and Rashawn Gary and Lucas Van Ness. None of those guys won one-on-ones. They didn't dictate to an offensive line, oh, my God, you got to pay attention to that guy. They don't have a game wrecker on that defense. So I think that's the area that ultimately hurt them. They couldn't get stops when they needed to.
Bill Michaels is our guest. He has the Bill Michaels Show, heard throughout the state of Wisconsin, the biggest sports talk show in the state. As we finish up on the Packers and get to the Super Bowl, just what do you see in the future for this Green Bay team? Does it get better or does it get worse?
I think it gets better. I think this, obviously being the youngest team, they're going to continue to learn. There's going to be – they got money to spend now because Aaron Rodgers is off the books from last year, and this is the year that David Bakhtiari now comes off the books. So now they've got $45 to $55 million, depending on what numbers you look at and believe, to spend in free agency. I think they're going to get 1 or 2 guys. They need a number 1 wide receiver.
Because that's the one thing I look at that team. I'm going, who's that dynamic receiver that they have?
They don't. Their best receiver is Tucker Kraft, their tight end.
Yeah,
that's their best receiver. So you need 1 or 2 wide receivers. You need a lockdown corner, and you need an edge rusher. Those are the 3 wants going into the postseason. Maybe if you upgrade your offensive line a little bit, that wouldn't be a bad thing. But you also have the number 1 pick from this past year in their first rounder in Jordan Morgan, who never played because of injury. So, but to me, I think they get better. I think Jordan Love goes away and kind of figures out some of the mistakes that he made, cuts down on the turnovers. But I think this is going to be – this team coming is going to be a better team, but the division's better.
Yeah.
With Ben Johnson
Detroit's
going to Chicago.
Going to be healthier.
Yeah, with Ben Johnson going to Chicago as their new head coach, Detroit's going to be healthy again. And, see what J.J. McCarthy does with that team now in Minnesota. It's a tough division.
Yeah, probably the toughest in football. Before we let you go there is a game happening this Sunday.
right? This is deja vu from 2 years ago, man.
It's funny you mentioned that because I did a hit with one of our, Sportsnet 650 in Vancouver before we came out here. And I said, I know what's going to happen this week. And you mentioned it, deja vu. Everyone's going to break it down. Everyone's going to say the Eagles got this. You tick the boxes, it's the Eagles.
Yep.
But they got Patrick Mahomes. Yep. Right? And that's... You're right, deja vu. I think that's going to be the theme the entire week in terms of talking to people.
I took the Chiefs by 3, 31-28. I said the Chiefs have won the most single-digit games this season. They don't panic. Oh, we're down 14. Who cares? We'll come back and win it. Travis Kelce's been a beast in the postseason. Chris Jones is a game wrecker. Yeah. They're just going to do their thing. And then you got Andy Reid, who knows how to call plays. And Spagnuolo, what he did on that final play against Buffalo to dial it up and put pressure on Josh Allen, he just knows what button to push. And if you get Jalen Hurts rattled, he will throw picks.
Philadelphia, I mentioned KC. KC has faced so much adversity this year in being down in games and double-digit games. Yeah. They've got those reference points, right? Yep. They know how to come from behind. They know how to react when they're down in a game. I wonder about Philadelphia, though, when it's all said and done. Can they react the way Kansas City reacts? And that, to me, will probably be I don't want to say it. Can they out-clutch Kansas City, right? That'll be –
Well, and one more thing is – It's the officiating. Yeah. That's going to be a story. Let's be honest.
And that's another segment in itself.
There you go.
Bill, thanks so much for stopping by. I always enjoy your hospitality and look forward to getting back to Lambeau. If you're a Packer fan, you've never been there, please go to Lambeau. You'll thank me later. Bill, thanks for stopping by.
You the man.